The end of the American Revolution in 1783 marked a monumental turning point in world history, but the conclusion of fighting did not immediately translate into stability or prosperity for the newly independent United States. In fact, the years following the war were defined by both hope and uncertainty, as the fledgling nation grappled with the realities of self-governance, economic recovery, and international recognition. One of the very first challenges was the formal withdrawal of British troops and the handover of territories. Although the Treaty of Paris officially ended the war in September 1783, the British were slow to evacuate key posts, especially in the Great Lakes region and New York City, causing tension and distrust. Meanwhile, the fledgling United States faced the enormous task of unifying 13 sovereign states under a central government framework that had been barely tested. The Articles of Confederation, ratified in 1781, gave Congress limited power, leaving states with significant autonomy. This structure, while revolutionary in its aim to prevent tyranny, created practical difficulties in managing national finances, conducting foreign policy, and raising a standing army. Economic hardship was widespread. The war had devastated infrastructure and disrupted trade, both domestic and international. Inflation soared as the Continental Congress had issued vast amounts of paper currency that quickly lost value, and returning soldiers often found themselves without pensions or land, leading to social unrest. In response, events like Shays' Rebellion in 1786 highlighted the tensions between indebted farmers and state governments, signaling that the promises of freedom and prosperity were not yet secure for many citizens. Diplomacy and international relations were also urgent priorities. The United States needed recognition and trade agreements, and negotiators like John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, and John Jay worked tirelessly in Europe to secure favorable terms. The Treaty of Paris not only recognized U.S. independence, but also granted generous territorial concessions, including land east of the Mississippi. Yet borders were often disputed, particularly with Native American nations who had their own claims and had been largely sidelined in the treaty negotiations. Native communities faced displacement and violent conflicts as American settlers pushed westward, igniting a series of confrontations that would continue for decades. At the same time, the social fabric of the nation began to shift. Loyalists who had sided with the British often fled to Canada or returned to Britain, while those who remained faced confiscation of property or social ostracism. Meanwhile, African Americans, many of whom had been promised freedom for fighting with the British or the Americans, found themselves navigating the complex and often disappointing reality of emancipation and continued slavery. Political ideas flourished in this period. State constitutions were debated and rewritten, emphasizing Republican ideals, separation of powers, and individual rights. Figures such as Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and Alexander Hamilton emerged as influential voices, shaping the philosophical and practical direction of governance. The need for a stronger federal system became increasingly clear as states struggled with inconsistent policies, trade disputes, and defense concerns. This awareness eventually led to the Constitutional Convention of 1787, where the U.S. Constitution was drafted, creating a balance between state and federal authority that would endure, albeit imperfectly, for centuries. Economic initiatives included efforts to stabilize currency, encourage manufacturing, and develop international trade networks. Maritime trade resumed, especially with France, Spain, and the Netherlands, but British trade restrictions and high tariffs remained challenging. Farmers and merchants adapted, experimenting with new markets and credit systems, laying the groundwork for the economic expansion of the early 19th century. Culturally, the post-revolution period was a time of reflection and identity building. Americans began to embrace symbols of the new nation, including flags, currency, and national holidays, while newspapers and pamphlets proliferated, spreading ideas about civic virtue, rights, and responsibilities. Education and the promotion of knowledge were increasingly seen as essential to maintaining a functioning republic, with new schools and universities being established. Despite the many obstacles, the post-revolution years were also a time of remarkable innovation and optimism. Citizens experimented with governance models, debated principles of liberty and equality, and envisioned a society distinct from European monarchies. The challenges were formidable, but the resilience shown during these formative years established patterns of political debate, civic engagement, and social negotiation that continue to define the United States today. And that's something worth remembering when considering how the ideals of a revolution translate into the lived realities of building a nation.